I compiled a collection of the worst writing advice I have ever seen in order to determine which ones are bad and which ones are really bad. Hello everyone, I'm Renee Rule and welcome to the Ruleverse. As you can see, we have a slightly new setup. I had to move houses, so we are in a different room. Same background though. I now realize that this bookshelf background is too small for this new setup though. I'm gonna have to get a new one, but we'll worry about that later. Today we have an extremely unhinged video. If you thought the last tier list was unhinged, this one's probably gonna be really crazy because I am doing the opposite of my good writing advice tier list. This time, we are ranking the bad writing advice. You know, things like, let the editor fix your grammar, or it's got to be perfect. Jeez, I'm already cringing a little bit inside just saying those. These are really bad, guys. Even so, I should let you all know that at the end of the day, these are just my opinions. Everybody's got a different writing style and different opinions on what's good and what isn't. If you have a different opinion, that's okay. With that, let's get into the tier list. So as you can see, things look a little different with this tier list. First, we've got the C tier, which actually represents it being, oh, you know, actually, it's kind of okay. I just kind of hate it. The D tier being, it's not great. The F tier being, it's terrible. The double F tier being really terrible. And FFF plus, beyond terrible. Never listen to it. We're gonna very rarely put any in the FFF plus, but trust me, some of these deserve it. And if you guys really like these tier lists, of course, let me know in the comments which one you want me to do next. I'll do anything writing related. And of course, if you're wondering what the background of this set of writing advice is, that is Michaela from my audio drama podcast, Rise of the Faunus. I drew her myself. I just thought I'd put her in here because she's kind of a villainy character, so she's gonna represent our bad writing advice today. So let's start with the first one. It says, don't use descriptive dialogue tags. So basically what this means is the word said is what you should be using. Because when you say he or she said, it kind of goes through the reader and they don't really process it, which can be good. It's almost invisible. It allows you to put more emphasis on the descriptions you actually want them to pay attention to. But I have found this to be bad writing advice personally because those descriptive dialogue tags can help convey the tone of the character. She exclaimed, she yelled, she whispered. So the whole don't use it, I can understand where these people are coming from, but really, you gotta take this with a grain of salt. I'd say use said the most, but use descriptive dialogue. It's okay. I know a lot of people like it. I used it a ton in my writing, and I know people like that, so we are going to put this into the D tier. Next is write only when you're inspired. My gosh, did this drag me down for years. A lot of writers, especially beginner writers, think that they should be writing only when they feel the spark, they feel the flow. I'm telling you now, it is going to be very, very rare that you actually feel like writing on any given day. Especially if you have a family, a part-time job, a full-time job, other responsibilities outside of writing, anything else. You're going to often feel like you don't have the time for it and you're not gonna have the mental space for it. But that's the thing with this kind of career. You don't have much of a choice. If you wanna get it done, you gotta get it done. So I think write only when you're inspired is really bad. We're gonna put it in the double F. Because I feel like anybody who listens to that gets held back a lot. Next, we've got more description is better. I'm gonna say real quick, I'm pretty guilty of this. My descriptions are like J.R.R. Tolkien-esque sometimes. What can I say? I love describing my trees. Nature is great. But if there's anything I've learned in going from intermediate writer to, I'd like to say, professional level writer at this point, it's that often with English, less is more. The shorter a sentence is, the more impactful it is. Instead of describing the body language of a character to convey that they're devastated, you might just want to say, she was devastated. That is more than likely going to get the point across way better than what you're already doing. That is, if you want to emphasize that particular point more. But really, with this piece of writing advice, it honestly depends. Sometimes we're gonna want a lot of description for a scene, but other times we're not. And that's really the writer's call. It depends on their style, and it depends on what details they want the reader to remember. So we're gonna put this one, it's not that bad, I don't think. Between C and D though. I still think less is more. for sure in most circumstances. So, D tier, it's meh. Next is you need an outline. Now for me, personally, this is not actually bad advice. In fact, I would say there's an argument for putting it into the good writing advice tier list. But the fact of the matter is, some writers don't actually need an outline. And when they're told that they do, they often waste a lot of time. I know some people that are like, I just get to writing and I structure the story as I go along. And I'm like, whoa, first of all, that's awesome. Could never be me. I'm always freaking out about the little details. And if I don't make an outline, I'm going to completely lose track of what I'm doing. But again, not everyone is like that. So saying that you absolutely need an outline, yeah, that's gonna hold some people back, and it's not good advice overall for the broader audience of people who are writers. And honestly, you don't need to do anything in writing. All you really need to do is what works for you and what your audience can understand. If you can get to a great story without an outline, more power to you. So I'm gonna leave this one in the F tier. Actually, wait, never mind. I changed my mind. We're getting a lot in D tier right now. I'm being kind of generous. Or actually, C? Are we thinking C? I don't know why I'm feeling C. Because this actually can be good advice for some people. Okay, moving on. Said is dead. While this saying is very fun and it rhymes, it is very untrue. And it's kind of funny because this is the exact opposite of more description is better, which just goes to show that, like, at the end of the day, you do need to trust your own instincts when it comes to writing because you're going to get contradictory advice, you're going to get contradictory feedback. But anyway, said is dead means you need to use more descriptive dialogue. So instead of the don't use descriptive dialogue tags, it's saying use them constantly, and don't use said because people are tired of said. Oh god, yeah, this one's terrible. Said is good. That's a good thing. Again, it's basically invisible to the reader when they're reading it, so it gives them a break from all the dialogue tags. Yeah, I think this one is at least double F. Said is dead. Actually, no, I am being too harsh. I think F is probably better. We're gonna keep it an F. I'm gonna tell you why. It is good to repeat the word said sometimes. It is good to use descriptive dialogue tags. Again, we just discussed that. I use them all the time. It is not good to use just that, though. So it's all about a balance here. Anyway, the next one is, you don't need to read to be a good writer. I don't know who the heck said this. This is really dumb. It's like, you don't need to study medicine to be a doctor. You don't need to study law to be a lawyer. It's like, yeah, you do. This is pretty much common sense here. You do need to read, at least some, to be a writer. You don't need to be the greatest reader in the world, but I would at least recommend reading some of the bigger, some of the well-renowned authors, some of the classics to see what they did right. So this is going to be our first FFF plus tier. What the heck is going on with that advice? It's really bad. Next is write every day. Some of y'all might be raising your eyebrows at me right now. Like, why is this in the bad writing advice tier? Shouldn't we develop a daily habit of writing? And while it's true that some professionals write every day, keep in mind that's also their full-time job, this is not good advice for people who haven't gone pro, because we have lives outside of writing. In fact, some professionals even do. And I don't know about y'all, but I am the type of person where when I need to get something done, I usually get it done all at once. So I only write about 2 to 3 times a week, and I will write for 3 or 4 hours and write about 3,000 to 4,000 words during that time. Like, I go super mode, and that works for me. And there's others that are like, oh, I do 15 to 20 minutes a day in the morning at least. Sometimes I do more. And if that works for you, that's fine. But for most people, I've found, and I've had a lot of author friends, that does not work because there are always gonna be distractions. So rather than write every day, I would say make a writing schedule that works for you and stick to it. So, D tier. I'm feeling D tier for that one. Show don't tell. Here's another one that might get me some controversy in the comments, but just before you hate on me, before you roast me, okay? Think about it this way. Show don't tell. That works really well for television media. Obviously, we want to show what's on the screen more than tell the listeners what's going on. But in books, you're kind of telling people everything. I mean, that's how a book works. You are describing the story in words, so you are telling them. Oftentimes when I convey that a character is angry, I will say she clenches her fists, her eyebrows furrow, and that can work for some scenes, but other scenes I just like to say, she's angry, she's furious, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. Rather than thinking show don't tell, what you should be thinking when you're writing is balance the show and the tell. You can tell sometimes, but you also need to show, and the two need to work in tandem together. It's a balance, as a lot of things with this craft are. So show don't tell, pretty misleading, but it's not the worst advice, I'd say. So, C tier. All right, this one is interesting. This one is the longest one on here, so bear with me as I explain it. It says, don't write characters outside your personal experience. So basically what that means is you shouldn't write characters you don't know. You shouldn't write minority characters if you're not a minority. You shouldn't write, anyway, I'm trying to think of a less political reason. You shouldn't write as many female characters if you're a man, because you're not going to be good at it. You shouldn't write characters from another culture, another country. Do you see how this can get problematic? Like, really fast? Especially with people loving diversity more and more nowadays. The real phrasing of this should be, it may be hard to write characters outside of your personal experience, so research it correctly. Talk to people within that group if you have someone you know who's like that. And make sure to be very sensitive and to be as accurate as you can with these kinds of people that are different from you, so that those people, when they read your writing, can relate to it, can say that they see themselves in that character. But saying just straight up don't write them, that's really bad. That's like really bad advice. Double F. The next one is one I'm pretty excited to talk about. Write like the good writers. And this is not saying take inspiration from the good writers. If it was saying that, that would be in the good writing tier list. No. This one is saying write just like them so that you will be trendy like them too, which is just flat out terrible. You should not try to be like anybody else, even if that means that will gain you more short-term popularity. You need to create your own identity as a writer. So write like the good writers. Not good advice, obviously. I mean, none of these are good advice, but this one's pretty bad. I'm gonna keep it an F next to set as dead. Just quit and get a real job. So this one I put in myself because I've had a lot of people in my life not directly tell me this, you know, they're never bold enough to do that, but they go, oh, so like when's the cutoff? Like, when are you gonna quit and get like a real job and really like get into that job? And I'm like, never. I mean, I have another job, obviously, I need money, but I'm always gonna see that as a side thing. And I'm always gonna see this as my main thing until it becomes my main thing. And a lot of people don't really understand that. They seem to think that there's some kind of cutoff for being a writer, that it's like being an idol or being an athlete, that if you don't achieve it by a certain age, you have to give up. It's not true. You can become a successful writer at any age, which is why I'm never gonna really be fully dedicated to any kind of real job. So this kind of advice, people like me, people like us, they never want to hear. It just sounds really discouraging and quite frankly, really condescending, because this is a lot of hard work. And to me, it is a real job, as real as it gets, really. It's like running a whole company by yourself. I mean, unless you traditionally publish, then good for you. So, double F tier. And now we have flaws make a character less relatable. This is the kind of advice you'd see on like Tumblr or on like fan fiction websites with people who want to do like these idealistic self-insert characters. I don't think I've ever seen any professionals say that this is a real thing, but I thought I'd include it anyway, because this is where we get the Mary Sue from. There's even professional movie writers who have thought it was a good idea to make a character have no flaws. But the thing is, and this has been proven time and time again in both fiction and in real life, if someone shows vulnerability, it makes you connect with them more. It makes you see them more as a human being, because we are human beings and we have flaws. So this one definitely FFF+. No doubt in my mind. In fact, it's at the very front. It is just god-awful. Next is don't use adverbs. I have actually seen writers online like seriously debate this. And by the way, if you don't remember what an adverb is, loudly, likely, it's all the ones ending in ly, but it's also things like just. You know, things that could be considered filler words, but in other cases, I've found them to be, you know, important to the description of a sentence. And I'm an English tutor part-time, and I've taught everything from SAT, vocabulary, grammar, parts of speech, blah, 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 blah. Adverbs are literally a part of speech in the parts of speech list. They're listed as a big part of English. So why are people saying not to use them? They're there for a reason. So this is just kind of dumb to me. But I don't know, if you despise adverbs, I suppose it's fine. They're kind of the least useful part of speech of all of them. But I still use them because they diversify descriptions. So yeah, to me, this is pretty dumb advice, F tier. Let the editor fix your grammar. This is one of the ones that I put at the beginning of the video to kind of hook you guys in, and this one just, it still gets me. If I sent my editor my manuscript with a ton of sentence errors and a ton of spelling errors, she would freaking kill me. Like, the editors already do enough. They do structural edits, they help you fix the story overall, character development edits, world building edits. They do more advanced grammar, they do structure of the dialogue and structure of the descriptions. They do not have time to fix basic grammar mistakes. You should be able to do that while you're writing. So definitely triple F. I hope that nobody's ever tried to do that, but somebody probably has. Then we have never use prologues. Why the heck do people say this? I mean, I guess the point is, oh, you know, you can just make that your first chapter. Prologues are pointless, but no, not really. I mean, for example, with my writing, I use the prologue to convey a different POV than the main characters that we get in the rest of the book. And each book is going to follow a tradition like that, where we get a totally different point of view, and then we go into the main characters, and it's that way for the rest of the book. And I can do it that way if I made that prologue my chapter 1. And one of my favorite prologues of all time that I've seen was actually in George R. R. Martin's Game of Thrones, where we see the White Walkers. That's the first thing we see, and then it cuts to the characters. And again, he doesn't show the point of view of the White Walkers for pretty much the rest of the series, so it being in a prologue makes sense. Use prologues, it's fine. If you need to do a different perspective, different sort of thing than the main story, use a prologue, just don't make it too long. Prologues should be short in nature. Write what sells. So this is in a similar vein to Write Like the Good Writer, so I already know I'm keeping it in the F tier. Let me talk about it a little bit though. This is saying, write the trending stuff, write the Court of Thorns and Roses, write the whatever next epic fantasy thing is, write in a vague European medieval setting like J.R.R. Tolkien, because that's what sells. But if it's not what makes you happy, don't write it, because you're not gonna finish it. It's got to be perfect. This one's pretty straightforward. No, it doesn't. In fact, I actually do not allow myself to read my writing after I've published it, because all I'm gonna want to do is make changes. I am going to want to make changes until the end of time. But if you have gotten to the point in your publishing process where the beta readers say it's good, your editor says it's good, your friends are going, hey, everybody's saying it's great, when the heck is it gonna come out? It's time to let go. I know it's hard to let go of your baby. I know it's hard for them to leave the nest, but they're ready, okay? There might be some issues. If there's some major ones, you can fix them, but it is never going to be perfect. So, double F. And we're down to the final 3. If you've made it this far, I love you. Please subscribe and stuff and like the video, it really helps me out. But anyway, this one says, you will make it if you persevere. Now this one on the surface really isn't so bad. In fact, it's kind of, you know, partially my motto for things, but the reason I put it into the bad writing advice tier list is because, and this is something I've learned in my adult life, just because you keep going doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna make it. And that sounds really awful. especially if, you live in America and you've been fed the whole, oh, American dream, you can do anything if you're determined enough. But the reality is not everybody makes it. And if you just keep going without realizing stuff that you're doing wrong, without making rule changes when something doesn't go correctly, if you just keep, oh, I'm just gonna keep pushing, I'm just gonna keep doing the same thing, you're gonna keep hitting a wall. So there are ways to persevere, but you also need to be flexible, and you need to be willing to make major changes, possibly even major changes in the career path that you even had envisioned. Maybe you're not a full-time author, maybe you're a writer of only short stories, or maybe you start publishing for a journal or something. You never know you never know where life is gonna take you, but I wanna be real with you guys. I don't wanna feed y'all BS. All this you can make it if you keep going stuff. I mean, determination is definitely a big part of it, but another part is luck. That's a big part. Another part is having the right strategy and also making the content at the right time and knowing the right people. That's a big one. So that's why I put this here, but I am gonna put it in the C tier. I'm gonna be generous. I think it's okay, and I think the better way to word it is keep going, but keep an open mind and be willing to make changes. Next is only write what you know. Second to last is only write what you know. This isn't the same as don't write characters outside your personal experience. You shouldn't only write what you know. In fact, as a writer, you are constantly learning, you are constantly researching, you are constantly, or at least I am constantly going out and trying to have new experiences so that I can relate to more types of people and write better characters. So only write what you know. That's bad, double F. And finally, we have get straight to the action. This is another one that I feel like if you argued it, it could be considered good writing advice, because especially with people's attention spans nowadays, you need to grip the reader's attention immediately. But I wouldn't say that you necessarily have to get straight to the action. I think the conflict does need to be apparent from the beginning, but if there's no action in the beginning, introduce something intriguing about the characters, introduce what's going on with them. You don't have to rush straight into something, especially if that something isn't gonna make any sense to the reader without some context. So, C tier for this one too. It's okay, but I wouldn't make it an end-all be-all rule. Sometimes world building's a little bit more important, but you do still need to have some kind of hook. I will say that. And that concludes our bad writing advice tier list. Honestly, it wasn't quite as bad as I thought it was gonna be. I thought this was gonna be like really unhinged, but it was only kind of unhinged. If you wanna see the full tier list, here it is right here. Editor, please put a screenshot up for everybody to see. And of course, if you think I should have ranked these differently, let me know down in the comments. We will have a civil discussion. I do not care if you disagree. It's totally cool. That's just part of life. I had a lot of fun making this and going over it with you guys, and I'm completely open to doing more tier lists. These videos are a good time for me to be casual and for us to really get to know each other, because my podcast and other types of videos are a lot more formal. I'm telling a story. Anyway, I hope this video has inspired you, and I will see you in the next one.